can get the meeting started.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. I'll call our meeting today to order and ask everyone to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
While standing?
Stand and recite. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call of members present, please.
Yes, Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
Director Branning.
Here.
Dr. Josie.
Here.
And Chair Hubbard.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Item 3 is meeting open to the public, inviting members of the audience in person or on Zoom to make public comment on items that are not on today's agenda with up to 3 minutes. Do we have any in-person members of the public wishing to address our board?
I don't see anybody in public here in person that wanted to address the board, and there's no attendees in the meeting. However, we did receive one public comment from an email from Evelyn G., a resident of Dublin, California. It was regarding the long-range transit plan, specifically school routes in Dublin, California.
So let's read that during that item, that agenda item.
Okay, that's fine. Yep, that was
Very
it.
good. Good. So with that, we'll move to item 3. Approval of the meeting minutes of the January 26th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Josie.
Second.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Roll call vote, please.
Sure, Vice Chair Brown.
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't present.
Director Branning.
Aye.
Director Josie.
Aye.
Chair Hubbard.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 5 is the long-range transit plan, an action item seeking approval. Is there a staff report?
Yes, sir, there is. Good afternoon, committee members, Chair Hubbard. Today I am presenting to you our draft long-range transit plan for your consideration, comments, and approval. We do have a slide deck. Would you please pull that up? Before we kick it off, I want to recognize and introduce Thomas Whitman. Many of you may recognize Thomas's name. Thomas works for Nelson Nygaard. He has been working with LAVTA for at least 8 years now, working first with us on our Wheels Forward COA, then helping us through various short-range transit plans. And so Thomas is here to answer any questions and help support me as I walk you through this presentation. Okay, next slide, please. So to frame our discussion today, I wanted to just give you some context as to the development of this long-range plan in the background, and then define the components of this long-range transit plan, which includes going over the demographic analysis, the document review, the wheels in motion changes, and then really, I think the exciting part is talking about what our 2034 network could look like. And then I want to touch on some near-term opportunities. This is a guide. This is not a one and done. We will always look for opportunities to implement service changes whenever possible. And then we can open it up for comments and discussion. Next slide, please. So way back in June 2019, LAVTA board awarded a multi-scope planning contract to Nelson Nygaard, which included the development of both our short and long range transit plans. Our short range plan is a required document. We have to submit a short range plan every 3 to 5 years to MTC. But our long-range plan is not a required document. It is more visionary in nature. As I mentioned, the grant for both of these efforts was partially funded by Alameda CTC. This was a 50-50 split. And understandably, the SRTP outreach was initially delayed due to the COVID pandemic. And then later, the scope of the SRTP was refined per MTC guidance. So you may recall MTC wanted agencies to look at 3 cost-constrained futures for the SRTP. So the SRTP did not include public outreach. It was really an exercise in budgeting. This board adopted our SRTP in fall 22, and then the long-range plan started shortly after. Really kicking off with a board workshop that was held in October 2022. Director Branding, this was before your time on the board, but I know Director Josie and Brown and our Chair Hobart all participated in that workshop. We did include some high-level stakeholder feedback in the spring and summer. And then we had some conditions change. The BART service change, which necessitated our Wheels in Motion, short-term service plan, was what we began to work on in the summer of 2023. And we also had some staffing changes in the summer of 2023. And so at that point, can you go to the next slide? Given that our grant with ACTC was expiring at the end of 2023, so it did expire, staff got together to better understand what would be the most valuable outcome of this long-range transit plan, given that we've had a lot of conditions change and given that we had a grant deadline approaching. So as noted, our long-range plan is not a required planning document, but it does allow for us to synthesize several of our planning efforts into one document, including the short-range transit plan, the Wheels in Motion plan, and then the Tri-Valley Integrated Hub Study effort. Stitching these together in a long-range plan is critical in our ability to be competitive for grants in the future. This also, the SRTP gives us an update of our existing conditions, including updated demographics using our 2020 census data so that we can better align our transit investments and future growth. Just to repeat myself, our LRTP is not our marching orders. It provides us a path forward for growth, kind of the what and the why, but it doesn't get up to the how and what are the trade-offs in getting there. And those are all very critical questions. And our updated strategic plan, which, I've been working on the scope of that for some time and I'm getting very close to the nearing completion. That will be our North Star, and that will incorporate our LAVTA long-range transit plan as a critical component of the strategic plan. But the long-range plan doesn't answer some of those priority questions. Okay, I can switch to the next slide. So a quick recap of your 2022 workshop, and I did today go back and watch a little bit of it. I couldn't commit to watching the whole thing, but I think it was a good foundation. There was some educational components to the presentation from the consultants. We talked about how the long-range plan can build on your short-range plan. Talked about the vision for the future. I think everyone participated in an exercise. What do you want the headline to be in 10 years, right? You might recall that. Jean, Director Josie, your comment was 15-minute service throughout in all neighborhoods. Carla, I think yours, Director Brown, was ridership. So I think that those were great feedback. So there was some polling done during the workshop. And our key takeaways were there was a nuanced discussion in all of the trade-offs that we have in transit. Frequency versus span versus coverage. And should we follow ridership? Should we chase ridership? There was some discussion about trade-offs for different riders, students, commuters, seniors. We also talked about traffic conditions and the pros and cons of serving elementary schools. So we did get some good feedback from the board at that workshop. So with that background, unless there are any questions, I can pause and take any questions on background. Okay. So I will move now into the exciting part of our presentation, which is our long-range plan. Next slide, please. So the first part of the plan looked at the current planning studies, current documents that have been approved in the last 5 years or so. So our consultant team looked at the Tri-Valley Hub integration study, looked at the most recent information from the Valley Link Rail project, looked at the 3 housing elements for each of our cities, and especially looking at locations of our planned affordable housing, which I think is very critical in the likelihood of transit ridership, which we'll go into in a few slides. And then looked at general plans, neighborhood-specific plans. In Livermore, there's an Imagine Livermore effort underway, and so our consultants looked at those different land use alternatives. And not surprising, connectivity in the Tri-Valley between residential and job centers remains essential. And feeding BART and our future Valley Link stations will be critical in providing quality connections to San Francisco and Oakland. While we're still seeing some depressed, return to office work, and we think over the next 10 years, we'll see that continue to go up. And so connecting to BART, connecting to Valley Link will be very.
What about ACE?
Oh, and ACE as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I did not call that one out. Next slide. So, and a lot has changed in the last 10 years. We know that just by looking outside around us. But I think it is important that this study include the updated 2020 census data and American Community Survey data. And there's 2 maps. So your packet has our full long-range plan. You have a lot of maps in there. I've selected a few maps just to show you today. Really focusing in on population-based demand, which is truly a blend of your population and employment density, and also looking at transit propensity index. How likely is it that a community will ride transit? And that can really be determined by a blend of 4 factors: low income, 0 vehicle households, demographic profile, and persons with disabilities. So next slide, please. Before we get into our maps, maybe I should have had this slide after the maps. What we see is the transit demand is generally concentrated in our city's downtowns and along major arterials. That we see planned employment centers are not always conveniently located to high capacity transit, so frequent bus service is essential. However, with relatively low population densities out here, few areas do support that 15-minute frequency. But there are some areas that are without service that do have the future densities to support higher frequency service. So on the next slide, this is our population and employment density map. So the darker the color, the more residents and jobs per acre. So we see Hacienda lighting up. We see Stone Ridge lighting up. We see Dublin Boulevard lighting up. We see some areas in Southern Pleasanton lighting up near the A station, which I'm intrigued by that. And then some areas in sort of central Livermore appearing in that darker shade. The next slide, please.
I would say that Lower Pleasanton is actually downtown.
Okay,
It looks like
downtown,
really all the way
okay.
through. There is an ACE station in that
Okay.
region, but that's what it looks like to me
Okay.
at least. So,
I think the ACE label is throwing me off a little
yeah,
bit.
I think so.
Those are big labels. Okay. And then, so your transit propensity index, this is where you will likely see transit ridership. And data over years and years of studying tells us that when you see higher percentages of low income, non-white, persons with disabilities, and 0 vehicle households, you see a higher percentage of transit ridership. And so, we don't see as many areas pop out with the dark maroon here, but there is some consistency, which that I think is a positive trend. So we see again the downtown Pleasanton, we see that same area of Livermore, and we see Dublin, particularly near the BART station, but also a little further to the east as lighting up with a higher propensity for transit ridership. So with that, I can move to our next slide.
Before you,
Sure.
oh, I just have a question about demographics. I can ask later though.
Nope, okay.
Okay.
It's the chair's.
So if I may, Chair, I have a
Yes,
question.
please.
Thank you. So I completely understand identifying people with disabilities, people that are seniors, people that are low income. But one of the questions that I have for you, and maybe this is just what you need for grants, but I don't understand the people identified ethnically as non-white. I mean, I'll say in my community, people of all nationalities are in all income categories. It's not, and I know this is different in some communities where where a non-white community I think there's a better word that they use at ACTC, but that tend to be, but not guaranteed, to be of a particular income category or in need of transit. But I don't really see that in the Tri-Valley, so I was curious why that was a choice.
And I'll pitch this to Thomas, but I do know that when you look historically at your transit rider demographics, you do see more minority riders, typically, and lower income and persons without access to a household. But I would like Thomas to.
Yeah, in our community, I know this is true for all the communities, we have 40 to 42% non-white, or actually Asian in the Asian category. And their average income is not low. So I'm just asking, I understand so many of these different categories because they are critical. If you're disabled, if you're seniors, if you're youth and you're riding the bus, you have some other characteristics, but zero vehicle households, for example, is a great one.
Yeah.
But just their nationality, I'm just questioning that. Thomas, if you could add anything, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, we went and tested various there in the ACS. There's a way to test, like, there's a question in there that asks, how do you move about? And so you can actually match certain socioeconomic or ethnic demographics with the likelihood that you will take transit. And so this is, we looked at what are the factors within the Tri-Valley that show a greater propensity than average to use transit. It may not be much higher, but it is higher than average, even in the Tri-Valley. And so there's data that backs that up. And for instance, you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, that seniors, I can see how seniors are. When we looked at the data, seniors in the Tri-Valley do not show a higher propensity to use transit than other people. So, or fixed route transit. So this is, we base these 4 factors on data that comes from the census, census data based, where we tested which different attributes show a higher percentage of transit usage than others. So that's where it came from. We tested it before we put it into the transit propensity index.
Okay, that's helpful. These seniors often are dial-a-ride.
Exactly.
In Pleasanton, we have our own shuttle system for Pleasanton rides. And so it would make sense that we'd have a lower senior fixed ridership. And I realize there might be some, gosh, I want to be careful with this, that some categories, so you're saying that there's an alignment there, so I will accept the data. I'm still very surprised by the information. If I look in my neighborhood or down the street and around the corner, or I look at my own statistics for my city based on the 2020 census, and I'll just say I'm surprised. I'm just surprised that there's a correlation. I get socio and economic, but I don't see them tied together, at least in my community. Okay. All right, thanks.
Well, if I might, I don't know that the correlation is because of low income. The correlation could be because people come here from countries that have a robust bus system and they're used to taking public transit. And so they don't have a stigma about getting on a bus the way sometimes folks who grew up here think, oh, I won't take the bus, I'm just gonna jump in my car. And so if you have moved here from a country that has a robust public transportation system, that's a natural thing to do. So I'm gonna leave the car at home. If there's a bus that's easy, I'm just gonna jump the bus. So it may not be because
I see if you're first generation, how that could be an impact.
Mhm.
If you're first generation, second generation, you've been here.
Sure, but all rolled in, I can certainly in my community where, people who I know who would like to take a bus and asking, how come we don't have a bus in this neighborhood? I'd like to be able to take the bus. I can see the correlation there.
Okay.
Great discussion. Similar discussion happened at Samtrans when we presented this transit because there was a lot of high income minorities. That doesn't always indicate. I think it's a blend of all of the factors on top of each other to see where are those concentrations of the various factors. So, but great discussion. And so another thing that our long range plan did was update our network because we have changed things since the long range plan kicked off. And so the long range plan does have a chapter just briefly touching on the changes we will be making here in less than a month, including reintroduction of service into communities that are currently without fixed route service, modifying our core schedules to align with BART, knowing that BART connectivity was essential, restoring service that has been suspended since the pandemic, and really excitingly expanding weekend service, which I really believe will be the key to growing ridership on our network. Next slide, please. So recommendations for this 2034 service plan have been built upon several components. We did not have public outreach for this plan specifically, but this plan did look at all the public input received from previous studies, including the data that we've received from Wheels in Motion, and that was a very recent outreach effort. This study looked at an assessment of current and future market conditions, looked at regional transit plans, local municipal plans, Wheels in Motion network changes, and also our JIPA requirements. And I'm pleased to say that while this is a financially unconstrained service plan, the end result is that we find ourselves in alignment with the JIPA, which I think is important, is an important goal. As I noted, this is not a fiscally constrained or financially constrained effort. We will require additional funding to support future service levels, especially as we enhance frequency. I noted that we are in alignment with our JIPA. And just to note, we did not make any recommendations for school service, nor did we make any recommendations for paratransit service. Your paratransit service area is very generous. We offer paratransit pretty much throughout the Tri-Valley, not tied to a 3/4 mile from a route. And we typically offer it from the earliest starting point, from our earliest route to the latest endpoint, which is very, very generous. And so we did not want to make any recommendations with paratransit service. And school service changes. We know there's a big milestone here in the next few years with Emerald High, which will provide some much needed relief for our school focused resources and also provide an opportunity to potentially do more. So we did not make any recommendations for schools. Next slide, please. Okay, so in 2034, we are recommending that there be at least 3 on-demand microtransit zones, and I'll explain to you what those are in a few slides. We are recommending connecting fixed routes at the Isabel Valley Link Station, which will be right down the street here. We are proposing a new shuttle or circulator for the South Front Valley Link Station. This is sometimes called the Midtown area of Livermore. So you may see it called South Front / Midtown in the document in your packet. We will clean up. There are still some typos that we noticed, so we will clean those up. Your network in 2034 assumes that some of your 580 express service would be replaced by Valley Link. This is typically what happens when you do bus rail planning and when you have an expanded rail service. There are bus routes that tended to do that express service get reallocated, and then you basically feed people to the rail system. And it's a great opportunity to realign resources. Your network gets you 20-minute service 7 days a week on 2 rapid lines, which is a substantial improvement from today. And we have a new regional express service on I-680. Next slide, please. This is a small map, and I apologize for that. This is just to show you where the lines on the map are for the routes. We've got your zones, your on-demand zones in Livermore are in blue, and you have one large on-demand zone in Dublin in green. You can see in the Springtown area of Livermore, so on the eastern side of the map, or the right side of the map, you've got a Springtown connector that is will be operating, I think, during the peaks, connecting Springtown to the South Front Station There's also a LLNL, Lawrence Livermore National Lab connector, going to and from that station. In green, you've got your 30R. I'll note that the 30R is assumed to be traveling along the Dublin Boulevard extension. So we would be looking forward to removing that route from 580 and keeping it, north of the 580 corridor, providing service between Livermore and Dublin. And I think those are all that I will point out right now.
I have a quick question on the
Sure.
slide, if I might. The green, microtransit area it looks like it encompasses all of Dublin except perhaps Schaefer Ranch.
Yes, that is what it looks like, and I think Dublin, we need to iterate on this a little bit because I think it's probably too large for one zone for microtransit. The larger the zones, the more you need more vehicles to maintain a certain reliability. So it's a comment that I shared with Thomas Whitman earlier today. It's something that we would want to think about, and also including Schaefer Ranch.
If we kept it as a Go Tri-Valley type, if we went back to the Go Dublin
Mhm.
model where you were using Lyft and Uber, then that's probably a reasonable geofence.
Yes, yeah,
If we were trying to do it ourselves with, small buses, then I don't think that we could do it
yeah, I agree.
in an
And
efficient manner.
I agree.
So just a comment. Okay, I'm gonna hold my next comment until.
Okay, all right.
I comment on this, maybe Evan's thinking the same thing, but it looks like that 30R is connecting Las Positas College into Dublin. And I don't know if that road is continuous yet,
It is not yet.
and you're making that assumption?
In 10 years, we are assuming that the Dublin Boulevard extension will be complete.
This is the 2034.
Right, I understand
yeah.
that. I didn't know if the two cities are even on their general plans to continue it. Okay, that's just a question, and not a political statement.
And I'm not making a political statement either.
And then I heard you say every 20 minutes, do you expect the routes to continue at 20 minutes?
Yes,
Even in that long range?
we have that is our plan, although our consultants Thomas was very thoughtful. There is a table in your report, like, what happens if BART goes back to 15 minutes? And I think that it's on page 62. And so it is something, we can't predict the future. The LRTP assumes that the 20-minute service will continue. However, if BART continues to see a growth in ridership, we will have some choices to make, which we would likely recommend matching the BART service with every 15 minutes. But we will, if and when that does happen, I think we will have additional vehicles in our arsenal to put back into service, especially depending if that happens and Valley Link exists. We'll even have more buses to potentially play with.
Okay, and then if I'm looking at this map again, and I'm looking for these micro stations. Do I see one in Pleasanton?
So there is not one in Pleasanton recommended, and we can, I brought that up as well. So we can, let's switch to the next slide, let's talk about this, because I think we're, of course, let's be open to everything, but I think Pleasanton, you do have your Pleasanton Rides program, which is unique for your city, and I think I wouldn't recommend running one on top of the other, because I think we'd be competing for riders. So if I can just speak to what is microtransit. First of all, we are doing microtransit already. It's Go Tri-Valley. And 20 years ago, we did microtransit. It was called general demand response. And you had to call a day in advance. And so it is not new, a new type of service, but it is newer in that we have this great technology that can really maximize the efficiency and the reach and the customer experience of this. So in my mind, in Christy Wagoner's mind, microtransit is operated with smaller vehicles, whether they are vans, sedans, or a mix of them. This is a curb-to-curb service, so it's not door-to-door like your paratransit. And oftentimes, a passenger will be asked to walk a short distance to a corner to pick up the service. So the passenger books in real time. they say, I want to go from here to here. They get in real time an ETA for their pickup. And then they can travel anywhere within that zone. It would be priced the same as your fixed route bus service. And the productivity it's not super strong, and it's not designed to be fixed route level ridership. What we're seeing typically is 2 to 4 passengers an hour. At Samtrans, when I had my microtransit pilot, we were hitting 6, but we replaced a bus route with microtransit. So you do see different ridership when you layer it on. But it is better than paratransit. Paratransit, you see about under 2 an hour. And I do think there's an opportunity to look at how microtransit can provide same-day paratransit in certain communities. I remain interested in that use case. We are recommending microtransit zones in Dublin and Livermore, but that isn't to say that Pleasanton doesn't warrant a zone. We're not trying to be inequitable here, but we recognize that Pleasanton has a Pleasanton Rides program that really does do a lot of what microtransit.
But we help subsidize it.
Yes, absolutely. So we could find a partnership there. Yes,
Find a partnership.
yes. And I just will say this, could replace Go Tri-Valley. That would be a board decision at that time, but I would likely recommend, if we got to this place where we're offering coverage in a zone, it would be duplicative to continue to offer your Go Tri-Valley. This also leaves room for emerging mobility. This leaves room for your shared autonomous vehicles. In the event that technology can get us to where it needs to be, you can see applications of that in this type of service. It also is good for last mile connector, not great for school transportation. I know that from experience. When you have 30 kids booking a ride from the same place, it can cause the system to lock up. So we wouldn't be marketing this as a school service.
Not marketing it as a school service, but what's to prevent the kids from doing exactly that?
Nothing. It would slow down the response time, and the user experience would suffer. So there's ways we can work with, app providers to geofence things or whatnot, but it's public transit. We couldn't prevent it, but I think if students saw that they were waiting quite a long time for a pickup, it could be discouraging. Is there?
I don't know if David has anything. I'm looking financially at this, 1 to 2 riders per hour. And I'm doing a bus or a cutaway driving around, hoping to get 1 to 2. It makes Go Tri-Valley or the use of an Uber Lyft option such a better financial arrangement for Wheels. I'd love the idea. Let me step back. I think I'm not crazy about a van, but a cutaway, me personally, that's a bus. That looks like a bus. And it's easy to get in and out of, not climbing in the back behind a minivan. However, 1 to 2, I would think, going back to my 10-year riders, 1 to 2 is a very expensive undertaking for such a small number. I would hope, if that's the way the board goes, that we can ramp that number up so that we're not writing such a big check just to have 1 or 2 people per hour. That's, I hope, part of your plan.
Yes, and it would be, yes, to grow ridership, and then if you see that you have these bus stops or these corridors where you have consistently high ridership, that's a candidate for a fixed route as well. That's how I've looked at it. And Thomas is nodding, and so I said something right. Are there any other
Christie,
questions?
question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so do we have an idea for what the per rider trip cost would be?
I don't off the top of my head. Thomas, do you have anything you can share?
I think the estimate that we used for this was that it was somewhere around the range of $100 per hour for a vehicle. And so it'd be somewhere between, around $25 to $30 per ride, would be the typical range of what we're seeing. Obviously with higher ridership that goes down, But I think that's what we're looking at.
And your paratransit per trip ridership is between, it's around $60, 60 to 65. So I think if you can meaningfully move your paratransit riders onto something like this, you can find some cost efficiencies.
And I think, Brian, point, I think the big thing is, we're looking for things that are more efficient than cars, not less efficient than people getting in their cars. And so, yeah, at 2 riders an hour, this makes no sense, really, but I know there are some places, and I looked into it, you have much higher than 4 per hour on these kinds of systems. The only ones I can think of are in very dense city areas, but, you're the experts. If you can find suburban ones that are really succeeding and how we can kind of emulate that model.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a lot more interesting.
To me, go ahead, Dave.
No, I just wanted to, I've always wanted to, and Chrissy and I had a conversation about this earlier today, and it is my tendency to underpromise what the productivity is going to be and what the ridership is, and rather exceed what those numbers are, rather than to tell you we can get 6 to 10 passengers per hour. Because there are places, and Christy's worked in one, there's another one here locally in a suburban area, where I'm at, whether that's at 10 passengers per hour. But I'd rather underpromise what that looks like and let the local market determine what that might be. Certainly the zones that have been drawn show potential to carry this amount, and but it is, I always feel like it's better to under promise and over deliver rather than vice versa, so that the costs are actually lower than what we said they'd be.
So do we have the bus and a driver? How's the employment model for this? Is somebody sitting around waiting, or if they're scheduled for the next day, they show up? If they're not, they don't. What if nobody orders this?
There are several models for how this can operate. The one I'm most familiar with is a turnkey model that, so you would hire a contractor that would bring operators, vehicles, as well as the technology. So the app facing technology. And so, yeah, how they work their scheduling. I think they probably have vehicles out in the field. They have like locations where they go and wait for their next pickup. That was my experience at Samtrans. There are other models they are more flexible. They've got the sedans, they've got drivers who pick their shift the day before, so it's a little bit more flexible. So I think we would be contracting this out when that time came. This would be a turnkey contract, and we could evaluate the different models for supplying workforce.
So we're not thinking about having LAVTA owned.
No, that would not be my recommendation.
Yeah. To me, these kinds of buses work best when it's a loop, like a downtown loop that's running constantly, and people can get on and off as, it's basically a fixed route, but a small one. Whereas the Go Tri Valley type model, that's already a turnkey solution that's out there for areas that just aren't served by more than a couple passengers an hour. But piloting it in a small area to get riders familiar with this sort of an idea. Look, there's this loop that just runs constantly, that's a short loop in an area like over by Las Positas, where we know those students are getting maybe to Valley Link or, or by the Isabel station, and running, figure out where the people are coming from, where they're going to, and see if we can do this kind of a loop.
Yeah.
And then expanding from there, so that when we are looking at, then taking that model to an on-demand, people are used to getting on these buses. We can say, hey, we've got the fixed route, but also we can get you to that fixed route. So that we're not trying to duplicate the type of thing that Uber and Lyft do on our own. Unless the idea is to pare down paratransit by doing this. What is it we're trying to do? Are we trying to get additional riders into our system? Or are we trying to get the riders that we already have in a more efficient manner? Like what is our main goal in this kind of service?
Yeah, and I think it's both, and I think it's to provide coverage in areas where a fixed route doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
I think it gives us a bit more control than our Go Tri-Valley, which we still may want to keep, but, that might not financially be the best decision for us. I like the idea, I definitely think a pilot would be absolutely appropriate. One other idea could be to work with the Downtown Business Association or chambers to make the pilot service fare free. And see if that can create some ridership.
I mean, I've talked before about Dash in LA, or
Yeah,
I think it was
yeah.
a quarter or something,
Yeah.
like 50 cents, I
So
forget.
cheap, yeah,
Super cheap,
Yeah.
and it, went downtown and went to some other hotspots, and it
Yeah.
was,
Right,
and exactly what you're saying, it came every 15
right,
minutes, and
right, and
it
I'm
was
familiar
almost
with
free.
ones in Arizona that it's the same thing, there's several different loops.
Yeah.
They just run constantly and it's free, you hop on, hop off. You
Yeah.
can't work it. And they're not, packed to the gills, but they're popular and then people are on them and. But you gotta start up soon.
Yeah, there's some over in Walnut Creek in the shopping areas, right. So, if I could, we have an agreement with 3CTA for paratransit, and if you're going to take paratransit riders and put them on another vehicle, and you have an arrangement already at JPA, I guess, with LAVTA and 3CTA about crossing the two counties for service. Recently, I saw, those 3Cs in Pleasanton, and I've seen them up in Contra Costa County. So one question is, we're gonna have to make sure we harmonize with that
Oh, yeah.
agreement somehow. And then I'm gonna do a bid, just because I know we have a contractual agreement to balance the 3 cities with service, and so if we're gonna try a new program, I'd like to consider a service balance for Pleasanton. You have no fixed route that runs along Foothill, and there are many houses that run along Foothill, and they would feed up to the Stone Ridge Dublin Mall BART stop. And there's just nothing that runs this way. You're running this direction. And of course you have Loop and Hacienda, but there's nothing that runs up here on the Foothill side. So I'm just going to offer that as some thought for consideration. And then again, to make our original contractual agreement between the 3 cities. So I balanced. I'd like to see something there. It's just my vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for, just to, if I may, the microtransit would not, duplicate our 1-seat ride service with County Connection. That is the service that goes beyond our service area, where you can take a 1-seat ride into Pinole if you wanted, or to Antioch. That still is a service.
But you're targeting those paratransits, those paratransit riders can only go so many places.
Right.
Okay.
Let's move on to our next slides here. So just to highlight, the new routes that we have identified, the 680X, as it's being named right now, name may change, but this would be connecting Pleasanton Ace, the Dublin BART station, San Ramon, Walnut Creek BART, and terminating at Martinez Amtrak. This is envisioned to be cooperatively operated with County Connection. We received, or the agency received several $1 million from TIRCP Cycle 5 to build a hydrogen fueling station. And actually, we've received money to purchase 3 new hydrogen buses to support this service. So we may be looking at rolling our 70X route into this service as a pilot opportunity. I'm also in talks with the affordable housing development in Dublin at the West Dublin BART station. And it's looking quite positive that we will be joining in the application to receive a very small amount of operating money to support this route. So I'm excited. This one I think is a much more near-term opportunity. We have the 2 Valley Link connectors, one to the lab and one to Springtown. I'll note, and I'll let Thomas correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Springtown connector was envisioned as a fixed route circulator during peak times, but on demand during the off peak. Is that right, Thomas? Or did I get that totally wrong?
Yes, that is exactly right. We felt like that the ridership might be high enough, during the peak times that it would be too much for one on-demand vehicle to accommodate. And so it would, ensure that, folks and residents in particular could access Valley Link from a job, to get to BART more effectively than they can right now. And, ensure that there's capacity for the on-demand service to distribute people from Valley Link to the jobs that are south of the Southfront station.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. We would be looking to improve our new Route 4 to 20-minute peak service, as well as adding service on Sundays. So currently, the route will only be operating Monday through Saturday. 10R would be improved to every 20 minutes on Sundays. Route 14, this is our pretty productive route that doesn't get a lot of attention. This route goes between Pleasanton and Livermore via Jack London and the outlets. We would be looking to deviate this route to the Isabel Valley Link Station and improving the service to match what we're seeing, with the BART connection. So every 20 minutes in the peak, 40 minutes off peak. So that one, I think, if we can advance one of these sooner than later, I think the 14 is in need of some extra resources. And our 30R would be deviated to the Isabel Valley Link Station. Weekend service improved to 20 minutes. And once the Dublin Boulevard extension happens, that bus would be serving that new arterial. Almost done here. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. So just really big highlights. Our new network is fully integrated with BART and Valley Link and ACE. Did not mention ACE, but it's an important transit service to mention. We are planning for additional service in high growth areas with new routes and on-demand service. Looking at better regional connections to the north and east. And I am definitely considering, exploring how do we provide connectivity to the San Ramon Transit Hub, which is a growing hub out there in San Ramon. We will be enhancing coverage, providing access to more residents and jobs. And I just love saying 20-minute, 7-day-a-week service on 2 rapid lines. That just is a really nice soundbite. Next slide, please. This is my last slide before we open it up. Near-term opportunities. So we could pilot an on-demand zone in Dublin early, depending on how the fixed route performance is looking after the new Route 4 starts, as well as funding. This on-demand could be a great opportunity to pursue pilot funding for, so we will keep our eyes open for that. Implementation of our 680 Express service as funding is identified. I'm working with an MOU with County Connection right now on that. Full enrollment at Emerald High in a few years will provide or should provide additional vehicle capacity. And we are just continuing to work on a lot of regional initiatives, all sorts of things, fare integration, mapping and wayfinding, network management, and very importantly, your strategic plan, which is my fault for having it so delayed, but that we are going to launch that this summer. And I think that you will all be very involved in that, and that will be our North Star to guide how we grow and what trade-offs we need to make. So with that, thank you for listening, and we are happy to take your questions.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Could we go back to the sort of the heat maps that talked about the
Transit density,
those
by
2 pages?
the first one.
Yeah, so I noticed that these composite demands, these are current.
Yes,
conditions.
2020.
Yeah, but we're planning for what the conditions will be in 2034-ish, right? So I know that there's big projects that are planned in all 3 cities. How are we integrating those projects that we know are coming down the pike? We talked about the realignment on Dublin Boulevard, assuming that goes through the way it's talked about. There will be additional jobs producers along, the residential there is very small, but there will be additional jobs producers along that route. Similarly, I know in Pleasanton with the redevelopment at the mall, there will be quite a few additional residences there that may fall into a high demand category.
Mhm.
They can walk to the BART station from there, one would hope, but that might not be where they're going. So they may be high propensity, riders. There's the Dublin downtown that will be
Mhm.
both jobs producing and
Mhm.
residential. How are those projects that we know are in the sort of medium range planning stages, how are those being wrapped into here?
So I will do my best to answer, and then I'm gonna look to Thomas, but, it is a great question. I think our short range transit planning efforts, which we do with every 3 years, that does give us an opportunity to look at what is moving forward in the development cycle. Of course, we do know, where some of the development is occurring, definitely Stone Ridge Mall is on our radar. But I would say this is an iterative process. We do service planning 3 times a year. We don't do it to this level every year, but we have a great service planner who does work with all 3 cities. And I think he does get development reviews and is able to comment on those. So that's very near term. I think our short range plan is kind of a more medium term opportunity to make sure we are planning for routes in the right location.
But given that this is our long term and those things are known knowns at this point, or at least known likelihood at this point, I'm just wondering, are they not included in what we're looking at? Or, I mean, did we just sort of gloss over those pieces?
Yeah, well, we have our Isabel neighborhood plan,
Sure.
and we've got some
Right,
recommendations for
because those are right
there.
around the valley.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they, to my mind, those are part of the Valley Link planning.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
But things that are not in conjunction with Valley Link don't seem to have been factored in.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, that those are also areas that we can focus on for grant planning.
Yes.
Because some of those, like the affordable housing project by the BART station that is also not really mentioned in here, but
It's a huge opportunity for us,
partnership
yeah.
for grants. So, I'm just hoping that there would be a way to roll those things in that are already working their way through the system. It's not just, well, in our housing element, we zone this site. Just to pick on Dublin, because it's the one I know, we zoned in our housing element, we zoned Hacienda for additional housing. We don't have any kind of an application for that. We don't have any kind of a specific plan for that. It is in our housing element. It is zoned for additional housing. But on our downtown, which is also zoned for additional, we've got 3 applications in, and we've got, we moved up to the board, the same with the affordable housing project you're talking about. The parcels that are surrounding the Dublin Boulevard extension, some of those are in the pre-application stage and further along. So we know those are moving forward. I would have liked to have seen more emphasis on, look, these things are coming well before 2034. How are we going to address them? And I think through our public comment that, the letter we just got, we don't want to be playing catch up when those things.
Thomas, did you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, and there are, certainly some of the, the look at where the big nodes of growth would be happening, whether it was some of the new affordable housing that is anticipated close to some of the BART stations. Certainly Stone Ridge Mall was on there, but even some of the neighborhoods that are, I want to say, under development right now. And it's in Dublin along Horizon Parkway, for instance, there's a master plan development keeps on moving just a little bit further, further west toward Doherty Road. We looked at what routes do we need to change between now and then to make sure that those areas have service. And that is one of the adjustments to an existing route is in there to serve this newly growing area that is pretty much under construction right now. So it's not really like looking at long range future, but it's not there right now. But anticipating what will be there from a demand perspective is one of those things. But certainly the Isabel Road area, making sure that Route 14 and the 30R, serve those, those new high concentrations as a part of this. The new services around South Front are a part of that. And and continuing to invest in the areas that in the map that's on the screen right now, the Dublin Boulevard, the north and south of the BART, as well as the 580, are some of the key considerations in terms of, where that demand will be. We don't know exactly what it'll look like, but the clues are there to say, we need to make sure that our service levels are commensurate with the demand levels that we anticipate to be out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So I have just a couple quick things. First, I want to compliment Mr. Whitman on the work. I thought your demographic work laid out beautifully. I really liked it. I read a lot of demographics in this job apparently, and I thought you did an awesome job. So I just wanted to say that. On the 680X, if whatever it will be, I hope that you can get that done. My wife no longer commutes to Martinez, but I don't know if you've looked at what it takes. She had to drive because public transit is almost impossible for a working day commute to Martinez. It's several hours currently, and lots of miles covered. So getting that done would be huge for, there are no north-south connections basically currently. Other than that, just small things that I think from the presentation, I was gonna ask them about the long-range transit plan, but this might be stuff that's being folded into the strategic plan, so, but I think they're important. One is route efficiency. Getting someone from Livermore to BART quickly is important for getting them onto the bus as well. I'm saying Livermore because we're the farthest to get to the station, but the amount of time a person's on a bus can be discouraging. I know most of the people I know, when they take BART, they will drive to BART and then drop their car off there, versus taking 10R or 30R. So something to, look at, especially wherever we can, improving that. If it means a third line at some point in the future, looking at what that would be. Splitting possibly 30R into two separate lines would be kind of the natural thing to do, I suppose. The other thing is, in this plan, I didn't see very much, as far as scenarios changing.
Yeah.
This assumes things are very stable from where we are, what we think will happen, and what the future will hold. I like the ideas of microtransit. I would actually like to see Go Tri-Valley go away. I think that it's a great program. I think it's really neat, but I think it's, taking away from what our core charter is, and it's definitely not more efficient than driving to have someone else drive you versus you driving yourself. You're going on your own. So the idea of some form of microtransit or limiting Go Tri-Valley, it's not great. But there wasn't really anything in this plan of what if ridership is going up dramatically or going down dramatically? How are we going to adjust and react to that? And, from your presentation, I assume that is something we can address in the strategic plan. I would like to see more of it in here. If Isabel gets delayed, or, I'm using Livermore examples, that's what I know, but say Isabel gets delayed dramatically or Valley adds on another 15 years instead of, in the next 10 years. It changes a lot of this, and we don't really have there was no what ifs in this.
That's a good comment, thank you.
Any other questions?
If I could just a comment, I'm just going to try to say it slightly differently, is I support cutaways. I think they look like a bus and they look like a fixed route, and that's what I've seen hop on, hop off, are the smaller, shorter, but they still look like a bus, not a van. I think a van, people are uncomfortable, especially COVID and so forth, a little bit more space. You can have good air turnover, which we need for health and safety reasons. And then second, if Go Tri-Valley is going to be phased out, I just don't want to pay $100 for a person to ride a bus.
Yeah.
That just is, it's so much even more than the paratransit, which is a ride. So we'll have to get the numbers out before I could support it. We have to really show some propensity and possibilities of really getting something that is financially feasible. I mean, we're not gonna bankrupt this organization over a good idea. Okay.
I agree. I want to see it go away, but there needs to be something better, not something works. for us.
Financially, yeah, sure, exactly. Okay, thank you.
Agreed. Is there any action needed?
This is an action item, we are asking for your endorsement today.
So are we looking to approve something we're not quite sure about, or I think I heard some questions about
We have
exactly
public
what we're looking to approve.
So we have public comment. I don't know if you want to do that first.
Sure.
Okay, so we have somebody here in the public, Stephen Dunbar. He'd like to address agenda item 5 and 6 today. And then we also had one public comment received via email. You can go ahead, Stephen.
Needs to be a mic here. Dave, can you?
We can hear.
Howard, you can hear me? Good. All good discussion, just wanted to add a couple things, for your consideration. I know this is gonna go up a level, so I'm doing it now. One thing I heard, a little while ago was that, and it may not be true when people pay in cash, but largely speaking, the number of unique riders on transit in the Bay Area has recovered to its pre-COVID number. They're just not riding as often. So that tells you something about what you might have to do to get more riders going forward. You have to attract new riders, broadly speaking, or you need to get your existing riders to ride at off-peak times. They may not really be incentivized to do. I think both of those things, however, for me, tie into just transit speed overall. And, you know, if I asked all of you why you don't ride the bus, it's probably because you have a really busy day and you need to get somewhere, or the bus is not near your house. Both of those things are tricky to trade off, but I think there are still improvements to be made. On microtransit, I think the thing that's missing from microtransit, every time I've seen you try, is integration with the public transit system. They are separate apps, viewed separately. You can't find it in Google Maps. You just have to know that it exists. I still think there is opportunity to get per hour ridership way up from where it is on existing microtransit systems. If they are integrated, if the thing tells you how to use it as part of your bus trip. And that gets back to transit speed overall, because if it tells you, oh, I'm gonna pick you up at this time, take you directly to the bus stop, the bus is gonna pick you up 2 minutes later, and it's gonna take you exactly where you're going. Now it's a lot more time. On the long-term thing, just a couple of like route cleanup issues that I'd like to see, just again, back to transit speed. I'd like to specifically ask that we consider extending the 10 down First Street to the Valley Link station from where it goes today. So if you're coming from Pleasanton and you want to go east, you might not want to take the bus north to Valley Link if that doesn't line up with the train. You might want to just take it through. Or if you're in, you know, the east side of Pleasanton or in West Livermore, you're going to want to go east towards the transit station. You're not going to want to. I think I want to hear a little more, but I'll leave it for another time about regional connections. Specifically, I really want to see if we can extend that 680 line south to Fremont, because it's actually, MTC even says it's an underrepresented transit corridor, even despite ACE, because there are people who want to take it at non-ACE times. And expanding ACE is really hard because of Union Pacific. Also Stockton. Stockton already runs buses through Livermore, but they stop in Livermore. So you have to go back to Dublin to go to Stockton, which is tricky. I want to see a little more about the Dublin Mobility Hub. I've already put in a couple public comments about the work that BART's doing at the BART station that I don't think is really aligned with what we're trying to do here. And I think that money could go a lot better into the Mobility Hub and connections with the 680 Express and so on. I want to have a plan ready for if autonomous vehicles show up so that we can shift to make them usable, not 2 or 3 years after they show up, but as they show up. And that can clear up as part of the long range plan. We'll get there in a couple of years and we'll know what it looks like. We don't need to know it today, but something I want to see. Then finally, I think this gets to the issue of how are we structuring it so as the developments happen, we're getting the service in and not 3 years later. And I want to drop the idea that we should be thinking about how we deal with development agreements, because often they like do a BMT reduction by doing the carpool rather than paying into wheels. Whereas if we had a plan ready, we could just pay the wheels and then the transfer would serve that income. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. The comment spurred a couple thoughts and questions that I have. Do we know and can we prioritize and rank, even with a sort of order of magnitude? Some people are riding the bus on a fixed schedule every day, Monday through Friday. The school trippers, they go to school, they go back. People going to and from work, other than if they're sick or whatever, mostly they're Monday through Friday at a certain time of day, they got to get to work at a certain time of day, they got to come home. Everybody else is sort of, a doctor's appointment here or there, or leave the workday to go do something. But I have to imagine that of all the trips done, that's why we have rush hour. That's people getting to work, people coming home from work. And do we know enough about, I mean, the BART parking lots have a lot of cars in them. If they're coming from the valley, San Joaquin Valley, or far away to get to our BART parking lot, then maybe our local bus isn't going to help them. But every Dublin resident that takes the BART every day, I don't know how many there are, of the people that park at BART, how many live in Dublin, live in Pleasanton, live in Livermore? The local people that park at BART ought to be candidates for maybe taking the bus to BART. And so can we understand that better? Well, talk to the Clipper card people that charge the Clipper cards, because they'll tell you if the people live in Dublin or Livermore or Pleasanton, maybe, or do a survey or somehow find out, because that's just one. It seems to me that if you're going to work on the BART and you live locally, maybe take the bus to BART, maybe. Then again, you're only having to go 8 or 10 or 5 or 15 miles. I don't know. Is it worth it for you to wait for the bus to take me home or get me there? I don't know, but it seems to me that might be one thing to look at versus the random people taking a bus in the middle of the day to run an errand or whatnot. Weekends, I think, might be different. So then if you're going to work or back or school or back, besides going to the BART, how many people, to Stephen Dunbar's point, how many are going to work all the way down into Fremont and where more jobs are, or going all the way down into Silicon Valley where all the jobs are, and just can't go at the time that ACE wants them to go. And can we supplement with longer range out of our area like we do with Walnut Creek? I don't know if it's more how many people from Walnut Creek and the Tri-Valley, that route versus the Tri-Valley and Silicon Valley. I don't know. It seems to me we have Google buses and whatever other large buses that are also going down that way. But is there an unmet need for that? Because that's truly going to take people off the freeway and things like that. I know it's not really in LAVTA's necessarily in our purview, so to speak. We're local, but is there a way to crack the code with, like we did with Walnut Creek, and see if there are unmet needs of people? We know the freeways are packed, so is there an unmet need there? So I don't know. It seems to me that that's a different exercise than maximizing our local public streets. But again, with the amount of riders we have, with the amount of people that live and work in the Tri-Valley, there's not many. Maximizing the local routes, I to the point of getting more people on it seems to me that if we concentrate on where they're always going, and to me, that's to and from BART, to and from work. So anyway, I know we do this every 10 years and it's great that we do, but I can, until we have more, I don't know. I'll stop there.
If I may, I have some comments. I thought those were really
Yeah.
good points. Translated, taking notes. So BART does a survey every few years of asking its riders how they got to the station, which is so valuable in transit planning. I don't think they've done it since the pandemic, but I'm gonna look. Because I think that is, it's very helpful to see where people are coming from or how they're getting there. For weekend service, I think part of the reason we are emphasizing increased weekend service is your weekend service, your ridership's already at 100% pre-pandemic. That is typical for what transit agencies saw across the country. Your riders who typically don't have a choice in in their modes of transport tend to use the bus for all trip purposes, and that's why you do see more stronger off-peak and weekend ridership, which is no different here. We have our peaks with our student riders, but the peaking of our former BART commuters has sort of has lessened. Fremont, 680 express lanes, that is an opportunity. We have not studied it. Years ago, we received funding through TIRCIP, I think cycle 2 or 3, to look at the Tri-Valley hub at the Dublin BART station and looking at an opportunity to fill a state rail gap, which is really why that 680 service was recommended. But with the 680 express lanes going to be complete here, southbound, I do think there's an opportunity, and I would welcome a study. I wrote how many people going to Martinez, and I don't know why I wrote that down. So I forgot my train of thought. But I think, we got a lot of comments here today. So I think if I could propose maybe 2 paths forward, we could make some notes in the document to highlight some of the concerns, in particular, what is our process for the near term? Shovels are already in the ground, lines need to be on a map process. That may, as we get into that level of planning, become a major service change depending on what the route changes are. So that would come to the board for approval, but maybe it's worth mentioning. In there, we could also mention that a future opportunity may be to look at the 680 express lanes and is there an unmet need? And so we can talk about looking at Foothill, for example, and try to get some minor edits so we can get that to the board for approval next week. Or we can take a little bit longer and bring this back to the committee at the end of March and for approval in April.
Yeah, great notes, but I can't support this until there's a microtransit somewhere in Pleasanton. It has to be balanced. The 3 cities have agreed. We're similar in size, and it has to be balanced, in my opinion. You got some great feedback, whether it's in Foothill, you decide. I'm not gonna micromanage it. I love the idea of 680 South. As a longtime commuter of 680 South, it's a nightmare. And there will be the express lane, and it's important to have it included in a 10-year plan. So I'd like to see this come back. With all these feedback that you received today, which is really important feedback. It's just my vote. I can't support it until all these things are documented and truly evaluated as a part of the process. Look, it's a 10-year plan. Should we rush it?
Is there a time sensitivity to this, Christy?
No, the grant expired at the end of 2023, so we are just, we're just covering the cost at this point, but it shouldn't be a significant cost to make these edits and bring this back to the committee in a few weeks. Unless, Thomas, you you disagree with me, please do speak now.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
Thank you. Very good. Is that a motion? Brown?
I don't know if we need a motion. I think it just needs to come back. It's fully baked. Okay.
Okay, very good. Well, it's asking for approval, so we'll bring it back then. Very good.
So we did have one public comment that was through email. Did you want me to put that on record?
Please, yeah, the Boulevard resident, yeah.
Yeah, so it was from Evelyn G. It was a resident of Dublin, California. I'll just kind of read through this. It says, The comment would be applicable to routes that service the middle schools and the high schools in Dublin, California, wheels bus routes 501, 502, 504, and 2, as well as any applicable new routes. These buses should serve as students in the new boulevard communities. She kind of explained which those communities are. This community was established in the last few years. The current routes running to and from the schools only stop on the corners of Hacienda and Dublin, or Arnold and Dublin, or Doherty and Dublin, or does not approach the area at all. This is not sufficient for the needs of the communities. She's asking the committee to consider the following school route service changes for Dublin, California, extending the school routes that run on Central Parkway beyond Hacienda Drive and Arnold Road to turn on Sterling Street and make stops along the way, adding stops on Dublin Boulevard between Arnold Road and Doherty Road, as well as exploring routes that traverse along Horizon Parkway. The changes will also help to set up the wheels bus routes to service the future Boulevard TK8 school, Shamrock Hills. She understands that school routes are likely to change for fall 2024 with the opening of the new Emerald High School at the 3600 Central Parkway location. She'd like Projects and Service Committee to take these into consideration when planning for the new school route service changes in Dublin. And she thanked everybody.
Very good. Christy, does that sound like you have that information?
Yeah, I was listening and I'll read the,
If I might comment on that? Chair
Sure.
Howard?
Yeah.
Do we, I have first a question, do we, serve the middle school, portion of Cotton Creek School? Do we stop at Cotton Creek,
I have to
which is
check.
also a TK8?
Is that on, let me check, I don't wanna misspeak, I can't
Okay.
remember where it is.
Okay, it's southeast Dublin. In the Boulevard project, we do have a street that will be completing, sort of cutting the corner off between Dublin Boulevard and Doherty, Scarlet.
Mhm.
When it goes through, it certainly would be an excellent place to reroute, some of the school trips to make sure that they are going through the Boulevard project. I'm hoping that we will be certainly doing that. I can't remember off the top of my head where the kiddos from Boulevard will go to high school, but we want to make sure, I think I'd have that map.
Dublin, hopefully.
Certainly imprinted in my
I think it's
brain.
Dublin.
I believe they go to Dublin Boulevard, the Dublin High, but I'm not entirely positive. I think they do.
And Dublin Boulevard is too far to walk. for the
It's from
students?
some of those kids, it's pretty far walk for some of those kids, but it is my hope that instead of going right down Dublin Boulevard, it will go through the boulevard and pick up Scarlet to go to Doherty instead of going down Dublin Boulevard and turning on Doherty. But you know, when we're dividing the school trip routes, I certainly hope we will pick up through that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And when Shamrock Hills TK8 opens, if it makes sense to have one of those school trip routes stopping at that school, depending on where their feeder neighborhood is.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of the kids that would go to that middle school live in the Boulevard and will be able to walk,
Okay,
but I'm not.
Right.
Thank you.
lots of school planning here.
Yes.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, are we bringing back Dublin school trippers?
Yes,
sometime this
we are
year?
coming back next month.
The next one?
Yeah, with a conceptual, or April, I can't recall, but yes, Cyrus has already put pen to paper with a route map for y'all to weigh in on, so yes, that will be coming back. But we aren't talking about the boulevard or any modifications, it's really resources to focus on Emerald High.
Making sure that we're serving those kids.
Correct.
So the kids in Boulevard as well. It's
For Emerald High.
for whichever high school they go to.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it is important to find out where they are going, whether it's by boundary or if it's by choice. I don't know if they're allowing open choice or not. But just to make sure I understand this, I do expect we should foresee a drop off in number of students going from East Dublin to Dublin High because they'll be able to go to Emerald High. Is that true, or am I not thinking of that right?
That is our expectation, that by 2026, 27, when Emerald High is fully at capacity or fully staffed or occupied, that we would see a change in demand from Dublin High. And so that, we have at this point, no more buses to add to the mix. And so whatever we peel off Dublin High to serve Emerald, that is fewer buses in Emerald. So we'll be bringing this back to you next month for your input.
I have one
Very
more
good.
comment. I'm sorry
Sure.
about the public comment here. The commenter requested stops along Arnold. I would not advocate for putting school tripper stops along Arnold.
Okay.
I know we're looking at, perhaps, running stops between BART and at Santa Rita along Arnold. I certainly wouldn't want to
Okay.
be intermixing the school tripper route and that route.
Okay, very nice. Thank you for that comment.
All right, so then let's move to item 6.
Great, thank you so much. This is an information item, and I'm going to ask David Mark to come to the podium and give you a presentation on our preliminary Wheels in Motion marketing plan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to present a marketing preview for Wheels in Motion. Wheels in Motion being our network realignment and public service enhancements that go into place on March 23rd. So from a marketing perspective, I thought it's pointing to point out that when you look at my agenda, marketing starts with the goal and moves backwards. It doesn't start with step by step sequentially. So the goal is to meet our objective, then we find a chance to build that. So we define our objectives, then we introduce strategies and tactics. Specifically, we also have a tactic that's a promotional officer that is unique as we haven't used before, at least not in my tenure, which we're really excited about. And then I'm going to share with you our creative concept. So on March 23rd, we'll be implementing our new network, and it's got extensive route schedule changes. Therefore, at its core, our current riders require education for trip planning, and there's a tremendous opportunity to bring in new ridership. So the 3 objectives that I set for this campaign are to educate our current riders about upcoming service changes and network expansions, ensuring those that are transit dependent continue to make it to work and time. We have an opportunity to acquire new ridership through trial of our transit services. That could be from a multitude of reasons. It could be because of better bar transfers. It could be because there's new service in your community. But certainly there are new opportunities that we need to incentivize people to use. Hopefully they'll ride it, they'll love it, and a percentage will stick with us. And the last piece is to maintain our strong community stakeholder support. We realize that not every resident is a rider of Wheels, but their support is extremely important, and that we meet their community standards is equally important to us. So first strategy is advertising. So in advertising, we're using both traditional and digital channels. Traditional media includes newspaper, radio, and associated digital properties. In this case, to be more specific, this is the Pleasanton Weekly. This is the Livermore, the Independent News. Livermore has the Lion. That's the digital piece of the same company. And the state funds zoned locally points by value. We also have various digital banners. City Region is on those individual properties websites. We'll have banners as we get closer to the launch date. I will have extensive social media, including boosted posts and banner advertising. That would be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We actually have a couple other channels that we're going to dive into, which are Spotify, that's custom music and podcasts, and Google Ads. So it's actually running an ad network that goes across multiple sites. It's the eyes that follow you around the internet. If you've shown any interest in transit, we'd like a place on your page. The big one is the transit app network preview. So we already subsidize transit app for anyone who downloads it and registers within the Tri-Valley. That's within a geofence. Transit has a unique feature where it can load two GTFS tables. That's essentially two schedules and show you them side by side. And so you'll tell the transit app where you are going now or where you'd like to go. And it will show you how you get there currently and how you get there after the 23rd. Tremendous first chance for people to download transit app because there's a call to action to increase that base for us, which gives them more access to our services. New riders will be able to see things that are not currently there. Most importantly, though, trip planning again for those who need to get to work or to other appointments. We'll use our buses to their max. We'll do some exterior vinyl and bus display parts inside. Probably mostly pointing at CTA towards our website to learn more. Our point system will have updates as well as transfer messaging. Our website will have another update of the same Wheels in Motion page that has been used throughout the surveys and the feedback. Of course, all of our schedules and timetables will be updated. Well, new printed material available on the buses and at the transit center. Our shelter maps will slowly roll out. The most notable ones will be the large ones in the rapid shelters. Those are pretty big, 25 by 25. We'll no longer be showing timetables, we'll just show frequencies, and those will be updated to include all of our new routes and stops. And last but not least, you'll see we're going to go into community relations shortly, and we're going to produce flyers and posters for our community partners. Slide. All right, strategy and tactic, a promotional offer, sometimes marketing trends incentive. So we're gonna run free rides for 2 weeks after the new network launches. There is nothing that motivates people like free. That is pretty standard. I'll put a checking account there, free toaster. Until I believe 2 weeks out is the 6th of April, everything will be free. Call to action for that will be included in our radio buys. I've got traditional, we're also including KIQ and most of our digital media.
Does this include our school routes?
When we spoke about it, I believe we just said network wide.
Network wide, so we would be offering free rides on our school routes again.
Okay, next slide. So community outreach, incredibly important, something I want to dive more into this year, and an excellent way to touch our many different demographics. So starting out, our big launch piece is the St. Patrick's Day Parade and Festival. I will participate in the parade in Dublin and man a booth for 2 days. We'll have all kinds of tchotchkes and we'll be there to educate people on meal services themselves and to show them the new possibilities. Especially in Dublin, you've got the Ford that'll be coming online, which a lot of the attendees might take advantage of. We will send ambassadors to Barton the Transit Center around the weekend of launch. So Thursday, 21st to 23rd when we launch, and Monday to catch those Monday morning commuters. And we'll be there to answer any questions and have new collateral on those routes. Once things have settled down, we'd like to get outreach to our local corporate and college partners. The remainder of the list is Los Pasillos, Livermore, Hacienda, and going through specific places, specific opportunities for community centers and schools on the 2 new routes. We'll also be issuing a press release, and of course, we distribute everything to 511 so that they can fix their job today. This is our creative theme. Get ready to roll. When I say this, shoot. Teams of trade is comfortable and convenient choice for Tri-Valley events and lifestyles. We do focus on a lifestyle theme. We like to show people utilizing the service. We have beautiful clean buses, and we like to showcase them. So our key messaging goes back to those objectives, supporting those. It's seamless smart meter connectivity with improved transfers, new and restored routes, providing transit access in more communities, and expanded weekend service hours that allow easy leisure trips. And the focus is on our current riders, our riders in the area of new service, weekend riders. In addition, the commuters, we might be assessing, primarily residents, we're assessing the option for a hybrid or return to work, return to office. We'd like to make sure that as that continues to happen, that we're on the table for them. And choice riders who conduct weekend leisure activities, a little bit different from transit weekend riders. This is people who like to go into the downtown areas and dine, like to head out to community activities, maybe hike. We're looking at the Livermore Downtown Festival as a perfect example, where the new number 18 goes right up to the transit center and is an easy walk down to First Street. So as those festivals happen, they tend to be Saturday, Sunday, and we want to partner and sponsor them in order to promote that membership. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Any questions or comments or discussions?
Just a question, when it comes to time for the fair, and it's a little outside maybe of the window, but, you talked about festivals and so forth. We have a Veterans Day parade that happens in Pleasanton, the fair that happens at Alameda County Fairgrounds. I just wonder if you're looking at marketing and advertising for those events.
I think that's something we've traditionally done, but I think it's an annual initiative.
We haven't done the Veterans Parade, as far as I know. All 3 cities participate and the county in the Veterans Parade, but the fair has been, it's like an annual approval. Seems to come to the board each year. Would you like to do this again this year, which is free rides from BART to the fairgrounds? So I just want to put it on the radar. So, but I love the idea of really getting the word out. Let it roll. Sounds like a cool concept.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure that you will all be hearing it on the radio, and by media soon. And I think that if any board member has ideas for community events that they'd like me to put on the calendar, please just reach out. I'd be happy to have them and be great volunteer for us to go out and address these things. So thank you.
There's stuff happening at the fairgrounds all the time. I mean, I don't want to be the only speaker, but you know, whether it's there's pasta festivals, there's a quilting, there's just like stuff. Yeah, there's stuff happening at the fairgrounds all the time. And not that I want to get free rides there, I just want to align, hey, you want to get here? Even you went out and you stayed a little too long and maybe shouldn't be driving home, take the bus. I mean, right, like you said, come to downtown, but sometimes maybe you should be riding the bus from downtown. Right, anyway, those are my feedback.
I have a question, if it's okay, for the St. Patrick's Day parade, we're gonna be in the parade, right? Will's
Yes.
gonna be in the parade?
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're taking the Magic Cruiser
Yeah.
down for
Yeah.
the parade. Do we have, are we just taking the bus through, or do we have walkers going along with the bus?
I think we were just thinking the bus, but we will have a booth there for 2 days, so if walkers would be helpful,
I know that some folks walk with their float.
and then they hand out.
And they hand out stuff, yes. So, that might be a way, the parade audience is different from the festival audience. The parade audience is almost exclusively Dublin residents.
Okay.
And if we have something to hand out that highlights the Route 4
Okay.
or any of the other, things that you really want to highlight to Dublin residents, if you can have a few folks that walk alongside the bus that have little tchotchkes to hand out, you know, that say wheels and also highlight the Route 4, that might be a great way to promote the new service within Dublin.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch up on something Chair Howard kind of brought up in the last item, and kind of talk with this. So LARPD has some magic technology, you'd have to reach out to them for more info, but basically they've used it for their events where they can see from cell phone data wherever it's coming from. And so using that with BART, we might be able to see, are there certain zip codes or certain areas? And then social media with targeted advertising, I think tying them together, trying to get people who are going to BART, we can start targeting the neighborhoods the cell phone technology they used was pretty cool. I think it's broken down only by zip code, but maybe it's even more granular than that. What we needed it for was only zip code.
Mhm.
But yeah, so then you could really target, pay for 2 weeks
Yeah,
for free, take the bus to BART. If you love it, look, it lines up perfectly now,
Mm,
voila, you don't have to waste your time, waiting around. I think piggybacking with that tech and some targeted ads might help a lot for getting back some of that BART ridership that is parking unnecessarily.
Well, I like the free rides for 2 weeks. Like I say, if it's free, it's for me. So maybe I'll take the bus.
It's free for me.
Is there no action needed on this?
Might have public
Not as a
comment.
preview. Let's go to item 7, upcoming.
There was one public comment from
Ah,
Stephen
yeah.
Dunn.
Great, welcome.
4 things to add, just your easy stuff. One, as we do the free transit, as we do it, really like to see how much it affects on-time performance. Because people aren't going to be fidgeting with dollar bills. It'll be really easy before and then after again. I'd like to see just what the commuter verbiage looks like for the outreach. And, I'm really affected, and all I've heard from my friends is, it doesn't line up, and I have to wait 20 minutes. And really speaking to that, and every single train on the 10 and 30 is gonna connect in rush hour. Why even drive? It's gonna, you're gonna get there at the wrong time, and you're gonna wait 18 minutes in the cold, versus the bus is gonna get you there right on time. I wanted to call out that Wheels has been doing a really excellent job with reroutes, especially for stuff like the fairs and parades, where it shows you on the app that those stops are closed, and will actually tell you exactly where you're supposed to get off still to get to where you're going. And that will apply to Pleasanton and Dublin Parade as well. I've had trouble with fair access recently, because sometimes they don't, at the parade, at Pleasanton Fairgrounds, because sometimes they don't open the east gates to walk-ins or whatever might be happening that time. So you have to go all the way around to the west-hand side. And talking with the fairgrounds about that for events that are really widely open to the public might be a good idea.
Did you hear that?
Mhm.
David, go unlock the gate.
I am not, the county fair board is a separate
I'm aware.
nonprofit foundation. They don't even listen to me.
That's comforting, actually.
Someone that doesn't listen to you, Dave, I find that so hard to believe.
As much as I try,
I just wanted to
but
call
I'm not
out,
giving up.
Never surrender.
I just wanted to call out really quick that the signs at the outlets, those like fake paper ones, are really often not up to date, and we're changing the schedule again. So we probably should just go out and check that they're giving you the correct time with the bus station. Thanks.
A good point about OTP.
Yeah, we haven't done a free fare system wide, I think probably since the pandemic. We suspended fare collection, which traffic wasn't normal then, so this is a nice little experiment.
Then we'll move into item 7, preview of upcoming committee agenda items.
All right, well, I'll be brief since we are late. Next month, we will bring you your paratransit customer satisfaction survey results and your long-range transit plan revised for your consideration. Stephen reminded me that we need to do the fare shuttle, and so I'm gonna plug that in for April. I believe that was something we brought Tony McCauley, since he's left. He was such an institution, and he had such knowledge about everything that just occurred regularly. So that is something we will be bringing to you. I think we have no expectations of doing anything different than we've done in past years. Also moving forward with your Emerald High School service plan, and working to get an MOU with CCTA for your 680 service. In May, your meeting falls on Memorial Day. So we are trying to keep that month free from meetings, so we can just cancel that. And if it is looking like something needs to be agendized, we will poll you, to see what time works best. I think typically they've met either before or after finance and admin on that Tuesday. And then, yeah, moving into June, TAC appointments, you'll have a fare structure proposal for you, to look at implementing free and reduced cost transfers. That's one of our regional initiatives. No shortage of work.
And what the results are for your 2-week free, I'm gonna find out.
Yeah,
what
we
the
can,
results are Gonna be for this program.
We can bring that to you in, yeah, probably your May board meeting. I can bring that in.
Well, if we don't have May, maybe June.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, depending on how much detail we want. I can do a high level blurb in our executive director's report and also, more data. All right, that concludes my update.
Very good. Matters introduced by committee members. Anybody want to introduce something? Stephen Dunbar want to comment on matters introduced and have something to introduce? No, okay,
Yeah, I'm good.
all right. The next meeting then, March 25th. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, thank you.